if only chemical guys had been like the answer, because they captured me right away, right? Like I was there. I was prescribed Adderall, and I was drinking 3 Monsters a day, and I was like chain smoking cigarettes. Okay, so like that's how I was coping. And I'm not saying that's a good thing. That's how at rock bottom I was. I just stopped being around the shop as much, and then resentment started to build, because when you're in a manual labor business, if you're not in the trenches doing the manual labor, resentment builds. I don't care what anybody says. And I remember going on to be like, hey guys, Ivan and I started this business. We would like to give away a free bottle of rinseless wash and ceramic gloss to the first 50 people who respond. 4 people responded, Jimbo. We couldn't even give the stuff away. Nobody gave us the time of day, and we thought it was over.
Oh, you're a pro, dude. That was so good. I love that. Well, welcome to the Auto Detailing Podcast, Nick. We've had many late nights together.
Yes.
That kind of sounds a little weird, but we've had many times. That does sound a little strange. And I've watched your journey from afar. And in this podcast, I really want to talk about kind of your journey. But to steal one of your questions, what does it feel like right now to be Nick McGurk?
It feels pretty good, to be honest with you. It hasn't always felt good. I do want to go back to like our genesis, which is like 2017. Mm-hmm. And I remember working at the TV news station. I was a reporter at the time, and I was just becoming obsessed with auto detailing. And I remember calling you on your number and leaving you like some voicemail about wanting to join the detailers in our circle and having questions. And then I had to get back into our assignment meeting, where every day we have an assignment meeting and go over possible story ideas for the day. And I couldn't answer the phone. And you called me back like 7 times in a row. And I just remember being like, oh my gosh, Jimbo's calling. I got to call him back. And so it's super surreal. And I've given you a hard time about it that, I don't know, 7 years later, I'm finally on the podcast that I found you through. So thank you for having me on.
I'm excited to have you on. And that's really what I want to talk about is like, I think your journey has been, I'm inspired by it personally. And I think it's cool. I think it's a really cool thing that I've been a part of that. And I think, I think other people can glean insight from it. And I think you're in a really good spot right now too. But take us back to that 2017. You're working at it as a news reporter, and why detailing? What was it about car detailing that made you start getting obsessed with it?
Well, I want to go there, but I also want to answer your first question. Like, what does it feel like to be me right now? Because, a week ago it changes, it was different. Right now I feel super on purpose. Like I'm like super excited. So we have DIY Detail, and then I just started a new podcast called Nick at Night. And that's what I'm excited to be podcasting with you, because I love this stuff. Mm-hmm. I love being creative. I love talking to people. And you and I just like have hour-long conversations and chop it up anyway.
Totally.
So I'm trying to keep this as
we're always like, we need to record this. It's like you and this one other guy that I talked to. Sorry to cut you off, but I'm like, man, I need to. And I think with an update on iPhone, it just came where you can like easily record phone calls. But I'm like, man, I need to record these phone calls because we talk about such good stuff, But that's also, to your point, what I like about podcasting is we could just chit chat,
My pledge to everybody is I'm going to try to be as much of like me and not like, Nick on camera as I can. I want to keep it real for the people, because your audience is like who is your audience, Jimbo? Like I have no concept of who listens to you on the audio side, because you've been doing this for so long.
The audio side mainly is, and I'm trying to get into video because obviously for YouTube, but on the audio side, I have some of the coolest detailers on the face of the earth who listen on the audio side. And I think because I've been doing this for 10 years or something like that, a little over 10 years now, it's given an opportunity to really, even with you and I, develop these relationships. So a lot of the people that follow have followed for a long time, right? And become like real friends, and I've seen like there's a lot of these people that I know their whole journey, right? And so it's really cool. We have like this really deep relationship with each other. I've met him at SEMA 3 or 4 times now. They had no kids and now they have kids. They, started their own.
How many times did you have like Travis McNutt, the paint slayer, on your podcast? I feel like I heard that dude
a long
on your podcast
time,
like 7 times. Like
a lot. Travis was on a lot. I've had Kevin Davis on a lot. I think he holds the record for like most appearances.
Now he's got his own podcast, right? Everyone's branching out.
Yep.
Detailers Roadmap.
Detailers Roadmap. Not sponsored. Yeah,
Get them to sponsor the podcast.
he also does a Maxed Out Man podcast. He has a couple podcasts.
It's like if you don't have a podcast, what are you doing with your life these days?
Podcasts are so popular now. I don't even tell people I do a podcast anymore because I'm a little embarrassed. It's like, if you're like, what do you do? I'm like, I have a podcast. No. It's not like that. But when I started a podcast, it was, I think Larry with Ammo had like put out like 10 or so episodes. And here's a little throwback for you. The second detailing podcast ever was the Optimum Synergy podcast.
After yours?
After mine. And
there's some bangers in that one, like Dan and Ivan.
they needed some help starting it up because back then, 2014, 2015, like what's interesting is, so you found me in 2017. I'd already been podcasting for 3 years, which is crazy. But, back then it wasn't like, hey, go on StreamYard.com and like, record real quick. It was very clunky, very janky. It was very difficult. But even back then I felt like I was late to the party, and kind of what you were talking about before we started recording is like, you'll figure it out, Jimbo. You'll figure it out. Cause I'm like, man, I feel like the old man trying to figure out like video podcast,
It's as simple as what you're doing right now.
100%.
And you export it as an MP3 and upload it to you. Whatever. Do you use Buzzsprout or what do you use to upload? Is this too Insider Baseball? Should we get back to the... No.
This is fine.
Because there might be someone out there who wants to start a podcast. What do you use to distribute your audio podcast?
So I use Libsyn. I've always used Libsyn. Okay. There was another one. I'm trying to remember the name of it. It was like Burberry or something that started that was really popular when Marty started like the Pints and Polishing podcast. Do you remember that?
Is that still around?
It's still around. Yeah.
Okay. I remember. Okay. This is just me being honest. And if you're listening,
it's
not me hating. It was because I'm an audio visual. I come from that school of just like, broadcast quality. And it doesn't have to be broadcast quality, but like for the most part,
I remember you in Georgia with all your camera set up and your lights.
It's always captured. If you're not white balanced and you're not on a tripod, but you capture the moment that the soldier returns and hugs his daughter, it doesn't matter. You capture the moment above all the style. But, so the substance is always going to be king. But if all things are equal, I want good audio quality and I want good video quality if I can get it. And I remember seeing Pints and Polishers and I feel like their microphones weren't very good or the quality of the video was, and I never watched again. Listen, I know Ivan, he watches every single video of every YouTuber who ever does it, whether it's boring or not. He's just such a rabid student of the game, and I give him all the credit in the world for that. If it's boring, it's really hard for me to watch. But I mean, homework is homework, and if you're going to be a student of the game, it shouldn't be, is it boring, is it not? But I am such a product of the culture where it's like, if you don't catch my attention, I'm not watching it. I'm not saying Pines and Polishers isn't amazing. It was just, I gave it a shot in 2019 maybe, and I thought the audio quality was subpar on the live stream or something, and I'm like, it just didn't capture me. But it wasn't because the substance wasn't good. Like I've heard great things about it,
Well, and that's a hard thing. I'm in the same vein weird with audio, like people's voices too. So like I get turned off sometimes with just the sound of someone's voice if it's not like deep enough, or like your point, they have like bad audio.
What do you think of Tom Brady's voice as an announcer?
I don't like it.
I don't like it either.
I don't like it.
It's very high. I'm like, can he just deepen that a little bit?
It sounds like he's trying too hard for me. Like he's trying too hard to be a good announcer, and maybe that's just part of like him finding his flow. I think that's this is one thing I share in common with Tom Brady of like finding I have my flow when there's no camera on, but finding your flow when the camera's on is definitely a different animal. And so I think for him, it just sounds like he's a little clunky and needs like a little bit of time to like find his flow and find his voice, but I don't love it. But to your point about Pints and Polishing, I think, first of all, I think Marty made a smart choice in bringing in Nick. I think they were like very beer focused. And actually DJ Patterson is another person that I've had on the podcast multiple times, was another one of his like co-hosts back in the day. But I think they were too focused on like beer. And I think that was turning people off, along with maybe some like audio issues, because it wasn't easy. It wasn't like go to Amazon and buy like the Amazon or buy the like podcast starter kit, right? With like the Rode mic and the nice like tripod and all. It wasn't that easy. So no one really knew. It was like the Audio Technica 2100, because Tim Ferriss used it. Right. And so it was difficult to find the right information. And then how do you get that microphone to work on your computer?
Sometimes you need a box to plug it into that then plugs into the computer. Like, and even how do you figure that out, right? And it's all out there in 2024, but like
It wasn't,
18?
right? And the Shure SMB 73 or 63, whatever it is now, like these mics sound amazing, but
Thank
anyway,
you, Joe Rogan and
Totally.
$42 purchase. I mean,
Totally.
this game still ain't cheap to get into. A lot of YouTubers in the detail space will edit on their phones because we have DIY Tuber where we promote these people who are kind of coming up in the game. Shout out to the DIY Tuber program. And I'll ask them on this. We have a little messenger. What are you guys editing on? And a lot of them like very proudly say I edit on my phone. And I'm not here to like chastise that at all. But I can't imagine as a full-time content creator, like my job is to edit our videos for DIY Detail, doing this on my phone. It would be crazy to me. But what is the investment? You need a nice, speedy laptop. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
this is all expensive. And like, shout out to the people who are doing it on your phone. But yeah, the podcast thing, it's easy, it's doable. Detailing is such a low barrier for entry that like, shout out to anybody who's fallen in love with it because of that. But yeah, there's levels to everything.
A lot of shout outs today. I like it.
You know, like I said, the coffee
vibes are high.
The vibes are high, brother. The vibes are high.
When you said 3 cups of coffee, I was just like, oh man. My first thought was like, make sure you go to the bathroom.
Oh, we've taken care of business. The thing is, at 2, I thought this is probably good, but if a little is good, more is better, right?
More is always. There's no such thing as too much coffee, in my opinion, or too much caffeine.
Let's talk about substances. So my lowest point of my life was caught shemi, going through divorce.
Was that the lowest?
It was pretty low, dude.
Okay, let's set the stage.
Yeah, let's set the stage.
Go ahead.
It's Atlanta. We get flown out to this Koch Chemie event, and
because they're launching in the U.S.
I think I'm prescribed Adderall at this point. Who can really keep track or not? But I'm taking Adderall to stay up all night and detail in my shop.
And this is pre-DIY detail. This is just Nick still working as a news reporter, detailing.
Should we go back?
Let's go back. Let's set the stage.
And possible, All right, what are we doing here? You're the podcaster.
So no. This is all good. So it's 2017 because I want to get into like your carpet cleaning days. I think there's.
Who doesn't? Yeah.
So it's 2017. I even want to go back to how do you get into news?
Do you want me to tell you the most? I went to Northwestern, right? Prestigious college. Tell anybody you went to college with at Northwestern that you're starting a carpet cleaning business and just see how they react. Okay. Like,
after a car
detailing, like I went to carpet cleaning technician school.
Yeah.
And I'm really into these high pH pre-sprays, but you have to make sure you neutralize with the rinse. And if it's a certain kind of stain, use this. Have you heard of this counter-rotating brush? Like, it's so good at getting into the fibers of the carpet. Dude, nobody wants to hear about carpet. Not your classmates, not your ex-wife, not your family. Like, carpet is the most boring, unless the detailers are talking. And then they got into carpets. Mm-hmm. Anyway.
So,
too many vibes? Too hot?
Not at all. I love it. I mean, that's what we're here for. Because I really want to title this like Nick Tells All. So like I really want to hear it all, right? And we have plenty of time. There's no rush. And so like, okay, you went to Northwestern. Did you always know you wanted to be like a news anchor? Was that the goal? Did you just fall into it? Did you want to be famous?
I was a really Probably, yeah. Okay. So in high school, I think when I was a real young kid, I wanted to be an actor. And then in high school, I was a real good student. I think I was afraid of failing. And
where'd you grow up? Did you grow up in Utah?
Minnesota.
Minnesota.
Born in Utah, but grew up in Minnesota. And I started taking school really seriously, trying to get into a good college, like in like 9th grade. So I was doing like all-nighters in high school, like for tests and papers and highlighting everything in the book. So I worked really hard in high school. I was like captain of my... I mean, not cool, dude. Like captain of the cross country running team and like tennis team. You know what I mean? It is what it is.
Multi-sport athlete, some would say.
Basically like a football star.
Got it.
Cross country and tennis,
right
like
there.
The most manly stuff. But I was like in all the groups, dude. I was in Quiz Bowl, Future Problem Solvers.
Okay.
I was a high school. I was a senior class president. Shout out to Iron High, class of 2004.
Did you wear glasses with tape in the middle at this time or no?
No, I played tuba in the band. So the way you get to be class president is you got to win over the whole band group, because the band is like a fierce and large crew. Mm-hmm. We had it was just, I was very like into achieving from a young age. Like where that comes from is probably a fear of failure. Like if I don't achieve, I'm not really important or worthy of like love or whatever. It's probably like some deep stuff about like, if I'm not an achieving person, like, am I worth knowing or caring about? Like, so there's a lot of that going on, but I don't know, I think we all have things that drive us. And so I wanted to be in like current events, and I grew up in Minnesota in a time when like local news was a big deal. Like the TV market in Minneapolis was one of the better in the country, even though there's like technically bigger markets like a Chicago or an LA or a New York or a Washington DC, or like even a Dallas is a very big market. You know, Minnesota's like the top 15, right? Minneapolis,
Okay.
St. Paul. But knowing the industry as I do, it was very prestigious in terms of just the overall quality of it. Like the polished nature of the videography, just like the newscasts. There were a couple of really good stations, including Care 11 at the time. And the anchors there were like the best. You know, we had like Prince, we had like Kevin Garnett, but really our local news anchors were like the celebrities in town. Like Paul Majors left Care 11 and went to LA, where he was like the big anchor in LA for years. But on his way to LA, like he was a big freaking deal, probably almost like Ron Burgundy. You know, I remember all these like big like articles about like Ron Majors or what's his name, Paul Majors, like leaving Minneapolis and Care 11, and like there were photos of him shirtless on the beach with his dog, like just like
In
personal
December,
profile
just to
puff
like
pieces. Yeah, just like
piss Minnesota people off.
but it was just like Paul Majors, like the god is whatever.
Mm.
So I just had this sense of like these local news people matter. And we watched the local news as most people that probably did in the 90s. So it was just like, I want to do something that matters. I saw them being on TV. It seemed very exciting, you know, and I was always into writing and current events, but I saw my mom, she was in like academia, like, and I thought that was kind of like pointless. I saw it at a certain level. It just got very, I don't know. She was like working on her dissertation for years and never finished it. Like her thesis. So she just like, I just felt like she spent a lot of time in academia getting grants and like studying esoteric topics that I felt like had no impact in the real world. So I sort of had this love for and like passion toward like school, but also a disdain for like the highest levels of it. I'm like, that's not it. So at some level, I kind of like liked writing, but I felt like the presentation and the TV and the video storytelling was more interesting to me. And I think that was a good instinct to have, because obviously newspapers and magazines struggled a lot and broadcast lasted a little longer. And of course now we're in the age of video with YouTube. So I think I was kind of born for it. But yeah, studied broadcast journalism in college and then got my first TV news job like in Clarksburg, West Virginia. And then I worked as a reporter in South Bend, Indiana, then in the Denver market, then in the Seattle market. And then I came back to Utah with one kid born, one on the way. We just need to get closer to family, and I had family in Utah. So anyway, it's like 2016, 2017, move an hour away from the TV station and get the Subaru Legacy, which was new to me, and I think this is going to resonate with a lot of people. You get the car, you try to figure out how to detail it, you find YouTubers who are talking about that, and you're one of them. You, Darren from Auto Fetish, Scott from Dallas Paint Correction, like Joe from Superior Shine.
Yep.
Dude, shout out Greg Masterson, Chemical Guys, right?
Yep.
And I'm watching these guys teach you how to detail. How many? How many?
I don't know. We're up at least a dozen.
And I'm like, I can do this too, right? So I start like buying all the products. Man, what was the biggest waste of money? There were some Chemical Guys products that I spent a lot of money on, like the vinyl rubber and floor mat cleaner, like the designed one. It was probably some APC. Got it off Amazon. Anyway, if only Chemical Guys had been like the answer. Because they captured me right away, right? Like I was there. I
say that all the time, and I worked at the blender that made most of Chemical Guys products, right? Like I literally worked there, and when I got that piece of information of like, we make Chemical Guys products, and I started to see, not to hijack your story because I want to make sure we go back into it, and then I just saw how bad of products they made, but how good marketing can just like triumph over that. And I thought, I started to develop this epiphany for me of like, could you imagine if you had great marketing and great products? Like Chemical Guys would be a juggernaut. Like they already are. But like, imagine if instead of your experience with buying Chemical Guys products being like, they're not that good. What if they're like, wow, these are great? You'd still be a Chemical Guys fanboy. Like they'd have an even bigger business.
That's the idea, though. Is like I'm a company man, obviously.
Yeah.
With DIY details, like what if we could provide education, right? Call it marketing, whatever you want.
Because that's what Chemical Guys did.
Doubling, right? Dude, you think Chemical Guys has fallen off? Look at their YouTube. They still have a lot of views and subscribers on YouTube.
They have not fallen off.
Chemical Guys fallen off. You just stop paying attention to them.
Yes.
All they have done, and what we're focusing on, is educate. Focusing on education, not selling product, not branding, not like foo-foo fluff. I mean, who knows, right? Everyone has an opportunity to make whatever they want. I'm sure there have been videos in everyone's channels that have been a little different than that, but like education, man, it's like because there's so many people coming in just like me in 2017. That's my own lens through this.
Yep.
You're starting out, you don't know who to listen to, and then you find someone you latch on. And the only disappointing thing for me at that point was that the products felt like they didn't quite work. And then I realized, well, there's more out there. Interestingly enough, the next brand I went to after Chemical Guys was basically Optimum Polymer Technologies. It was Ivan, and that system worked good, except for, to be honest with you, I think I skipped a little step there, but I will want to talk about the products. It was their fabric clean and protect product. I felt like was just over promising and under delivering, and that's when I was like, I'm not getting what I need. All these detailers in California have no idea. They were the ones that I watched. You, Darren, like people in warm weather climates had no idea what to do with ice melt. So I had to like figure that out, and I went to Janitorial World and carpet cleaning technician school, and then I found like BioBreak from Bridgepoint and then Flex Ice, and started making videos like shouting from the rooftops like, this is the, and now a lot of detailers use that. I haven't made any money off it, but I'm like, at least I had some contribution to the industry, which was like helping guys really figure out deeply soiled carpets, seats, and then ice melt, which I think ice melt, there's different ways to skin that cat. But anyway, I'm falling in love with detailing. I'm doing a story about a woman who has her car broken into right in town, and she's like, don't look at my car, it's messy. I'm like, I'll clean it for you, because we were going to get a camera shot of it, and she's like, don't look in there, it's super messy. I'm like, I'll clean it for you. She's like, I'll pay you. I'm like, seriously? And so on my day off, I went back, double dipped a little bit, and I think for like $100 I did her car, and then the neighbor was like, can you do mine? And I was like, sure. And it was way over my head, and it was just horrible, and I had no steamer, and it was a horrible mommy van. But you learn your lessons real quick there, and dude, after that it was just game over. It was so intoxicating. And you look now and you're like, rich people don't have time, but they have money. And then the opposite of that is like giving away your time, when you don't have money. And I was like, I'll just give away my time. Like I still had that I'll pull all-nighters or do anything I have to mentality that I had in high school, but now I have 2 kids and a family, and so it was a strain, because all of a sudden it's like, wait, you like car cleaning now? Because it just came out of nowhere. I was never really into cars. I just fell in love with car cleaning. And
so what'd your wife think at the time? Like,
she was not a fan.
Obviously you had mentioned that she's your ex-wife, so I guess we know the end of the story.
That, but
yeah,
I do want to try to get like a divorce attorney on the podcast I just started, like how to prevent yourself while starting a small business from like losing your marriage or your family, because I know what it's like.
It's so common. It's so common.
It is so hard. Like these businesses don't start themselves.
No.
And detailing is very time intensive. So like, you have to have the right partner. You have to have the right foundation. And for her, like I had never even expressed an interest in cars, but I certainly liked making money. I certainly liked feeling like what I did mattered. And like, what it's like, customers are really stoked when you do a great job.
Totally.
Like, there's a real connection there. And I think I felt starved for connection at home, maybe, and 2 small kids. And it was like, that wasn't fun or exciting. And I ran away from that. I was being immature, and like I made some mistakes, and I'm sure I haven't figured it all out. And I think that I'd do it differently if I did it again. Maybe I would, maybe I wouldn't. But,
So all that led us to Atlanta, Georgia.
Dude,
in 2020, right? So 2020, that was 2020 or 2021?
September. It was like fall of 2020.
Okay, I remember, because I remember it being kind of like, whoa, you're traveling and COVID and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, hell yeah, I'm trying to get out of here. I'm like trying to do anything, right? And Atlanta was like, we're open, baby. Not only are we open, but we're having an event. We're having an event.
Did you just try to do a Southern accent?
No, maybe. And so we meet at, because up until that point, had we ever met in person, or I don't know if we ever had.
I don't
but
think so.
I
think after I joined the Detailers Inner Circle and quit, I was done with Jimbo.
Got it. After you bought the same truck as me and all that.
Oh, we didn't talk about that. I was trying to talk trash about does Detailers Inner Circle still exist?
It still exists.
Oh, then I don't want to talk trash about it.
It still exists. It's pretty small. It does still exist. We added a CRM component to it, which is actually really incredible. But honestly, since February, kind of my whole focus has been growing the Jimbo's Detailing product brand. And so I haven't talked so much about that. Trying to focus on.
What a plug-in, dude.
Dude,
your podcast.
Jimbo's Detail. Well, I got it right here on the mic. Where's my finger? Right here, right? See that placement?
I thought we were talking about I thought with the inner circle, it was like I was like for $9.99 a month, I can text Jimbo whenever I want.
Yeah.
And I didn't get that access, bro.
Yeah, you did.
Like
we
a day
had
later. I was like, oh, for $10, I deserve more than. No, I don't know.
I don't know.
It was fine.
But yeah, it's still going on. Still actually really good. I actually have a call tomorrow for that.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool.
I forget where we're going there. So anyway, 2020, Atlanta, Georgia. I don't know if we had met or not. Doesn't really matter. You roll up to the Kosh Kemi event with a production studio because at the time
me,
you're
though.
just you because you're doing Hawk Pro, right?
Pro, yeah. And I had brought on a business partner, and I went from mobile to having a shop. And
That's right.
We were just about to jump into a bigger shop space.
That's right.
The whole idea was like, you go out there, Nick, like make some amazing content. So I wasn't there to network. I was there to like get every video shot that I could.
Right.
Game time.
And how'd that go?
It went all right. I think I missed out on some things, but it was good. I interviewed Matt Mormon. That was a good interview. Man, I remember the first night, dude, I was like chain smoking cigarettes.
Chain smoking.
Not proud of that at all.
And I love the smell of cigarettes. So I'm all for it.
Dude, don't be. So I don't know, man. And then like the next day, there was like a big event going on. Like Andrew Werkheiser, I think it's his name, from Koch Chimney. I like needed a room in this Porsche. Like what was that place?
It was a great event. I think it was the Atlanta Motor Speedway or something like that. It was like it was a track, right? I think it was a track, and then people have like their garages there too. But then they also do like go-kart things. I guess go-kart racing is a big deal. I didn't know anything about it. I still don't. But Brian Crosby was talking about how it's like a big deal.
And I think there was an event going on that I totally missed because I had to do a virtual meeting with the judge to get custody for my kids while I was at this event. This is how much of disarray my life was. So they put me in this like side room. I don't even know what it was. And I'm like, nobody can come in here, whatever. And Andrew was cool. He's like, yeah, we'll get you this room. And I did this virtual console, and I brought a shirt and tie, like that. I wasn't going to wear a shirt and tie to the Koch Shemeva, but I brought a shirt and tie for the judge. And literally at that virtual meeting with my attorney, and like that's when I got like awarded custody for my kids. This was like 4 years later. I have the same custody. Like that was the day it happened. So that's how much was going on that day. So I hope if folks out there are starting a business, you're doing good and you're giving time to your family and stuff. I don't know. It's hard because
it's a very common thing. I mean, you brought up Travis McNutt and this other guy, Rob Craven. I remember they, along with Travis being on the podcast a lot, they were also like ceramic pro trainers back in the day, and they were just traveling all over the place. And I remember at that time, asking them like, dude, how do you guys do this with, I think Travis only had a girlfriend and Rob was married, but like, how do you guys, how do you travel for a week at a time and then you're home for like a couple days and then you go travel again? And at the time they were like, oh man, it's fine. Like they don't care at all. Right. And Travis would bring his girlfriend around, but like a few years down the line, you started to see that stuff kind of unravel. I actually think Travis is back with that girl, but I think Rob got divorced and is bumped around, but it's not too dissimilar to what we see with people kind of what I think marrying brands, right? The maybe Mike Phillips or Jason Rose, like these people get married to brands, right? And then it's like their whole life, too. And so whether it's that or people running detail shops that are married to the shop, right? And they're married to their customers. And I don't know why it seems very common in the detailing space. Maybe it just seems common because that's the space we're in. But like, it does seem like personal relationships do get the brunt end of it sometimes, and it's always a bummer to kind of see relationships fall apart with people. And I wish detailers would focus more on like their personal lives too.
Do you think that it would be ideal to have your girlfriend or wife or whomever like in the business with you to stay, or would that be hard too? Like, I don't know. There's a playbook for this, is there?
There's not a playbook, right? And I think everyone's trying to figure it out for what works best for them, right? Because I think, even, I don't know. My wife works with me sometimes, but I'm a difficult person. And so it's like, I think sometimes it's like that. Sometimes I love when she works with me, and then sometimes I absolutely hate it. Right. And I think from her perspective, it's even hard for her to like jump into something that she's not in day to day. Right. And then like jump in and try to make decisions and then jump out again. Right. Like that's difficult too, so I don't know. I have no idea, but
I remember I was gone too much. Right. So then I was like, here, Jess, you take the phone. And then she responded to all of the customer inquiries, and she was responsible for scheduling me. And it worked out sometimes, but sometimes it would be
Right.
like, I'm not scheduling you, and then it'd be like, oh, well, like we could use the money. I'm like, well,
Right.
you haven't scheduled me for 2 weeks on everything. And it was just this whole, looking back, it was like, it all led me here.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no playbook in life. And like, how did I get here? Whatever. And I'm grateful for it leading me here, but it was hard, man.
Yeah.
And I couldn't have predicted it would lead me here either. And
I think that's from my perspective, seeing you in 2020 at that event. Like it was like seeing someone, and it's so obvious that like everything is in disarray, and then not like feeling for you, and then not knowing like, man, how do you pull yourself out of that? And then to present day. So I guess let's bring it into like, you're basically at rock bottom, right? And then
at
what
that time,
yeah, what did you and there may be people listening that are at rock bottom right now.
Totally.
Right? So what, like, how did you keep going during those like darker days of your life? And then how did you get the tide to shift a little bit to like, finally get the momentum back on your side? How'd you get the vibes up? And give shout outs.
At the time, I was prescribed Adderall, and I was drinking 3 Monsters a day, and I was like chain smoking cigarettes. Okay. So like, that's how I was coping. And I'm not saying that's a good thing. That's how at rock bottom I was. I still believe deeply in the dream. Like, it hadn't all crumbled yet. Like the idea that we could create this detail shop and I could be as big as Larry at Ammo at NYC. That was like, I put that on my little, like, not vision board, but I had a little like notepad. Like, I want to be as big as Larry at Ammo NYC. And I would look at it every day. So for me, Hawk Pro detailing was like something I was good at, making the videos. It was growing steadily enough. 25,000 YouTube subscribers at the time. So I was excited about it. Kachemi flew me out to Atlanta for an event, right? So it was like, yeah, this is happening. Like, I'm a little micro influencer in this space, and it's paying off in ways that I can't really quantify yet, but I think are going to happen. So I still had enough blind hope of, I can't tell you how this is all going to play out, but I think that it will, right? And I still loved detailing, but if I was just detailing and I didn't have the content side of it, I don't know, man. Because the dream was always like, because I have the on-camera thing, I still have my day job, right? So I was like working my way up there at the TV news station as well. But I was pretty burned out. I knew that, viewership for local news was going way down. No one watches appointment news anymore. It's all fractured online. And then there's a lot of like, honestly, I think like being called fake news a lot wore me down as well. Like, yeah, I just felt like people were just, there's no respect for the industry that I'm in anymore. People aren't watching. The pay sucks. The hours are long. You think it's this really glamorous industry, and it's just not. And so I was getting very burned out there. And I think it was just this sort of blind hope that on the content side, if I kept making videos, something might happen. Maybe I would just grow to 100,000 subscribers, or maybe I don't know. I thought something would just potentially happen, or the growth would continue. It was hope, dude. I mean, it was hope. It was a belief in myself, maybe, and no shortage of hard work either. Like, I've never been afraid of that. I just, when you look at some of the people who succeed in life, don't you think it's not people with the silver spoon so much as it is, or like the opportunities, as it is just like the secret commonality among most people that are successful is hard work?
100%.
Am I wrong there? I mean, I think
no.
You freaking got to work, bro.
You're 100% right. One of my favorite quotes of all time, I'm a big quote guy, I call them like bumper stickers, is hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work. Because me personally, I feel so untalented with a lot of things, right? That I'm like, but the one thing that I've always been like very proud of is that I'll just try to outwork everyone or anything and everything, right? And time again, I've seen that work is like, man, even if you're not the most talented, right? Like, I remember at SEMA one year, they wanted to do like a buff off. Like, people wanted to have a buff off.
Did that ever happen?
I don't know if it did. It sounds super gay to me, but
I would have loved that in my prime.
But you would have loved that.
Because that was the goal, is like, be the best detailer ever. Not be
Yes.
the best businessman. And I just interrupted you, didn't I?
No, go ahead.
Fernandez on Nick at Night, premiering Sunday at 6 p.m.
Okay.
on House of Rags.
For sure.
8 p.m. Eastern.
Two of my
I don't know
favorite
when this
people
is
in the
gonna air.
world.
Joe Fernandez, he says, in this interview, he's like, if you're a mediocre businessman and a detailing god, whatever. But if you're an awesome businessman and a mediocre detailer, you're going to be so successful.
I mean, let's bring it back to chemical guys, right? Like subpar liquids in the bottle. I think the vast majority of detailers would agree, but they've paired that with an unbelievably strong marketing campaign and have tapped into the culture or they know their audience at least,
like,
right?
Do you know the names of these people anymore? Like, I recognize some of the faces, but like I knew who Greg was.
Right.
But I feel like they've had a lot of people since then, and they just keep on churning away.
Yeah, but chemical guys, they also pivoted their whole business model and focused. Like you don't see the smart wax stuff anymore. You don't see like them selling gallons of stuff anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they've really have pivoted to like that retail dominant, Amazon dominant plan, and they're just crushing at retail, you know.
Good for them.
And Amazon. Good for them, right? But it's I forget how we even got there, but it's so I've always thought like just, you know, working hard can outbeat people that are talented. And I saw it in real life of like, man, you know, someone who's like maybe really artistic and just amazing at like drawing stuff or designing stuff, right? Which is an area that I suck at. And you kind of envy that, right? Like, man, I wish I was a good designer, like could like whatever. But then you see those people that are like uber talented or a detailer, right? Like this guy's such a talented detailer. He can, you know, remove wet sanding marks at 1500 grit or 1200 grit or 900 grit or whatever, right? He can make this paint look like glass, but then he's like not a hard worker. And it's like, well, he could do that, but then he doesn't because he doesn't have that like hard work gene mixed in with the talent, right?
And then there's guys who can do it and do work hard, and I feel like never get the limelight, and yet are excellent at their craft.
Shout him out, Nick. Like who?
Jason Kilmer, man.
Yep.
Like Jason Kilmer, I that man knows what he's talking about, and I think he's gotten plenty of spotlight. But you know, I feel like he hasn't been the social media superstar of this era, and there's just probably guys that we've never even heard of who have, you know, some amount of talent. Not maybe Jason's, but like who are just running shops or mobile detailing. Out there, and man, I love.
There's
that.
a lot of them because social media is a whole nother element, right? It's a whole nother skill set on top of that.
Totally.
And it's defeating, man. Social media is defeating. It's like just when you gather enough confidence to stick your phone in front of your face and talk to the world, there's the scumbags that will tell you in the comments of what a piece of crap you are.
Gary Vaynerchuk, man. That's who I listen to all the time. That's the thing is, like, we were talking about, I'm like, you should start this video podcast and then create 5 or 6 short videos out of it. I think you should edit them, not your content guy, and then put them on Instagram and Facebook at once, and then TikTok, and then also YouTube Shorts. And you're kind of like, yeah, and I'm like, but I do this full time, right?
Right.
And it's the thing is, like, my full-time job is content. I live, breathe, eat it. Like, I think about it all the time. Like, I edit every day. And so, dude, it's not that it's too crowded out there because nobody knows who anybody is, right?
No.
Like Gary Vaynerchuk's like, you know, I get people saying I got 50,000 subscribers and I don't want to give them oversaturated. He's like, dude, nobody knows who you are. He's like, Gary Vaynerchuk's like, I go through the airport and I maybe get stopped 10 or 15 times for selfies. It's overwhelming. It's a lot. But there's 4,000 or 40,000 people in that airport who don't know who I am. So even at that scale, right? But he inspires me a lot because he's just got that Jersey energy, and he just kind of always is like trying to fire you up. So it's a crowded marketplace right now.
Do you think it's too crowded?
No, I don't think it's too crowded.
Yeah, I don't either. I know
it's
even
now about viral. It's now about like if you have 0 followers but a dope piece of content, everyone will see it.
Right.
Everything it used to be that if you had all these subscribers, automatically you'd get a lot of views.
Right.
Or open rate on your emails. Now it's if the video sucks, people don't see it. If it's good,
it's almost worse if you have a lot of subscribers. You see some of those guys that have a lot of subscribers and then they put out a video and it's got like 3,000 views, 4,000 views, and you're like, oh gosh, he fell off. What happened?
I'll take 4,000 views any day though. You know, it's still
4,000. 100%. Yeah.
If you have 1 million subs and you're getting 4,000 views or something, I could see that.
So do you remember like a pivotal time where you really felt the tide start to switch, like the dark cloud kind of leave a little bit in your journey?
That honestly at Koch when I found out that I was, I got custody of my kids, child support got sorted in that one, and it was like, okay, I got a path forward, And then I was living at my shop. Remember, I was living at my shop at that point.
Yeah.
I was sleeping on a wood floor on the upper level of my 800 square foot shop.
Because you were dedicated to the detail shop.
Not ideal.
Yeah.
I was separated at the time. The divorce wasn't finalized, right? That thing just takes a long. People think if they get a divorce, it'll be amicable and like it won't take that long, and you'll just like agree on things. But by the time it gets to that point, just word of warning, man, things get a lot messier. So it took more than a year for the divorce to get finalized. But I remember feeling a sense of hope after that. Like I have a path forward. I can get an apartment, and I'm going to see my kids at a certain amount. But you know what was hard about that? I lived at the shop before. I was 24/7 into it. And the difficult part having a full-time job was now I had 2 custody days. So I got an apartment so that I could actually fulfill that because I couldn't have my kids at the shop. There were just too many chemicals around. Like their mom wasn't okay with it. So like I now am not at the shop all the time. And the 2 days I had off from the TV news job used to be fully in the shop, man. I was in it. And now I have my kids. And I kind of tried bringing them around and putting them like in the lobby while I worked, but it was different, man. It was just not easy. It wasn't convenient. Wasn't good for the workflow. So like I just stopped being around the shop as much. And then resentment started to build because when you're in a manual labor business, if you're not in the trenches doing the manual labor, resentment builds. I don't care what anybody says. So then I would come after my TV news job at like 10 o'clock at night, pop half an Adderall, and have a Red Bull or whatever, and then work till 5 in the morning. But nobody saw me working.
Jesus.
So like nobody perceived it, and so it was like, and I'm not the fastest, I'm a little bit. So and sometimes I would be shooting content too, and I was sleeping like 1 or 2 hours a night for about a year. That's your opening podcast soundbite.
I'm taking notes. I'm taking notes.
Now, okay, you punch the sound bites early, draw the viewers in, and.
I think the sleeping on the floor was a better soundbite.
You think that was good too? Okay,
I like that one, so I did make it.
The soundbite.
I did make a note of that because I told my guy, I'm like, hey, I'm gonna get some sound bites of yeah. So I'm trying to take notes. But yeah, thank you. If you have any more tips, you can. And we're leaving this in because I don't edit. So
no. So it was just that was a hard time, man. And I think even recently, like their mom was like, I don't know. So we got into some kind of argument. And it was like, whoa. What did all that work, do for you or whatever? Like, you work in car cleaning. She said that with such disdain.
Recently?
Like a month ago. We got into, like, we never talk really, but we had this in-person discussion. It was like, I was trying to explain how certain, my worldview or maybe with the kids or, I don't know. And she was like, well, look where that got you. You work for a car cleaning company. That's what she said,
Excuse me, I'm a podcaster. Okay, I just started Nick at Night. Not sure if you heard.
Have you heard about it?
Have you heard about Nick at Night? And I'm about to go on Jimbo's podcast. So I mean, I'm kind of a big deal over here. I mean,
it took 7 years, but I'm on the auto detailing podcast.
I mean, I'm a pretty big deal. Okay.
Auto detailing podcast.
Yeah, that's what you should have told her.
I don't know how we got to this, man, but I don't know.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter how we got there. Oh no. So you were talking about the dark cloud kind of leaving. So you got the custody thing, the divorce gets finalized, you get an apartment, but then resentment starts settling in because you're not at the shop as much.
I'm like, I want to get off the Adderall. I want to stop smoking cigarettes. Okay. Like, then I started vaping. Then I quit Adderall. Dude, I've done it all. But I quit Adderall and all nicotine. Right.
Okay.
Still off it, so I feel very comfortable. Like I didn't just like quit it for a season. Like that's no longer a part of my life. That was hard, because then I wasn't detailing as much because I had my kids. I was kind of barely making content. I'm kind of gaining weight because I don't have the caffeine and the nicotine to like keep me going. And it kind of felt like Hawk Pro detailing was at a standstill. Business wise, we weren't doing amazing, so resentment was starting to build there because I wasn't around.
Because you still had the partner, so
still
had
the partner.
Okay,
we went to a 4,000 square foot shop.
Jeez.
I'm kind of working on the YouTube, but again, I'm not really in the shop that much because I don't have that much time, and I'm starting to realize like I need to sleep, right?
Yeah.
So it's like I wasn't relying on substances. I was trying to be healthy, and it was like I'm driving an hour to work and an hour back. It's like there's not that much time left in the day. Then I'm a dad on my days off. When do I detail? I don't want to do it until 5 in the morning anymore. So that was starting to fall off, and I was kind of like at this point of like doldrums in my career. I'd gotten promoted to like the weekend anchor at the TV news station. But I was just kind of going through the motions there. I think I was good enough to kind of get away with it. It was like the last place station in town. Like we're not a very prestigious station in the Salt Lake market. And so I don't know. It was fine. Like I had a fine job. I was happy to have like the limelight and get to perform because I enjoy that. But my heart wasn't in the actual content. And 3 days a week I was reporting and I was just kind of burned out. And Ivan had messaged me on Facebook Messenger about like this business opportunity. And it had been like a year before and I was like, yeah, I'm open to it, but I thought nothing was going to come of it. And then the ball started to really roll again. He came out to Utah.
What was his pitch? What was his pitch on Facebook Messenger? Do you remember?
I wish I could find. Nick, I have an interesting business opportunity for you that you might want to consider. Call me at your convenience. It was something like that. You know?
And that had happened.
I like the old school call. I like the phone call.
Okay.
You like the phone call?
Yeah, I did. I'm more of a texter to phone call. So like text me, let me know because I get so many spam calls all day long. So it's like text me, let me know what's up, and then let's jump on a call.
Yeah. Schedule the call. I appreciate
schedule the call, because you can't replace the call, right? There's just like
the call.
There's too much stuff. There's just too much stuff that needs to be discussed for a text, or definitely don't email. Like we're not emailing back and forth. One, it's going to take way too long. Two, I'm a horrendous.
How many unread emails in your Gmail account?
So actually, I do respond to everything, but I will say like for long, like if it's something like, hey, I have this business proposition for you, right? It would be like, no. But because the Jimbo's Detailing brand, right? jimbosdetailing.com. Like I respond to 15. I respond to every message that comes in because those are my customers, right? But if someone had like a serious issue, and there's been multiple instances of this over the years of like, hey, let's just call, like let's jump on a quick call,
I'm resisting the urge to ask you questions because
ask away
on Nick at Night.
I'm coming on Nick at Night if you will allow me to come on Nick at Night.
So I want to know, you've started this product brand.
Yep.
We literally like Ivan responds to most of our YouTube comments, which is a full-time job in itself.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have Sam who works on our customer service team. We get dozens of emails a day, people asking, how do I use this? Or something streaked, or my product, when it got shipped, there was an issue. We take care of everybody, right? Like customer service is such a high priority and we get accolades for it, right? So it's not that like the product streaks and DIY detail sucks. No, it's just sometimes there are issues, as you know, and people have questions and they reach out to you. How do you're wearing every hat, man. Like I am focusing on, I get emails and I respond to them as well. But like you're getting product questions. You have to pack and ship. You're dealing with, the chemist, and like, how many hats are you wearing? How do you balance all that? That's crazy.
I think a big part of it is that I've done it. So back to 2016, because the podcast for me was like, hey, I'm detailing, not too dissimilar from your story, right? Of like, and I've told it a million times, so I'll make it short, but like, I'm started mobile detailing in 2008. My family starts growing. I start having kids, and I'm like, hold on a second. Like, if I'm not working on a car, I'm not making money. Like, this is not going to work long term, right? So I need to figure something else out. And at the time, detailing was becoming very monotonous to me, right? Very boring. And so I was listening to audiobooks and podcasts while I detail. And so I thought I had the epiphany one day, or I was talking to a guy, Pete, who I do the Detailer Inner Circle with. And I was like, man, I really want to start a podcast, but I don't know what I talk about, right? And he's like, dude, you're such an idiot. How long have you been detailing? And I'm like, well, since 2008. So it was like, I don't know, what was that? 6 years at that point. He's like, well, you probably know everything there is to know about detailing. Why don't you just talk about that? And I'm like,
so shout out to Pete for the
whole idea of, and so I went home.
Okay, Pete deserves some credit. Okay.
Pete deserves a lot of credit. And so I went home and searched like, how to buy a website domain or something. And it was like, I wonder if autodetailingpodcast.com was available, because I think that would be like, the best name, right?
Yeah.
And it was for like $10 or whatever. And so I bought it. and started figuring out this, like, how to record a podcast thing, right?
Okay.
And then no one knew me, so I was like, well, I should interview other people, because then maybe other people will find me through those people, right? And so I've literally interviewed like everyone you can imagine in the detailing space. Like, I was even thinking about guests for you for your Nick at Night. Not that you asked, but
No, I want, because I'm only
like
as good as the
Cougar.
guests.
Do you know Cougar with Lux Auto Spa?
Yeah, in Salt Lake.
Salt Lake, great guest. His
I also
yeah.
think the really successful podcasts out there that I watch online, people fly in for that. There's a reason why, because the quality is so much better when you get the microphones in the same room, and the different nice cameras. And I don't think we need that for detailing, but it never hurts, man.
It never hurts.
Ever complains when they're in a nice car, or they get a nice
Mm-hmm.
meal, or they're sitting in a nice chair, or they have a comfortable bed. No one ever
Being bougie is
minds.
nice.
No one
Being
ever
bougie
minds
is
the
nice.
good shit.
No
It's
one
just,
ever
we
minds.
can handle it without it, because in detailing, the information is king.
Yeah.
I truly believe that, because we started DIY Detail with 2 cell phones.
Totally.
And yeah, it's like, and because Ivan has a lot to say, honestly, like, dude.
And start it and grow.
The substance trumped the style. So we can do well in this space without it being like perfect, but in person, I think with Cougar in Salt Lake, because it'd be a 45-minute drive, it'd be a great idea.
Yeah. And Scott Perkins, Scotty Shine Shop, he's a really good in Canada.
He was
He's another
one of your
good
OG
one.
guests.
Yes.
I tried to get him on a call, and now I look back, I'm like, I wouldn't have talked to me either. I literally called his shop. I'm like, is Scotty there? Hey, Scotty, I heard you on that. Oh, yeah. Oh, thanks for calling, man. Hey, can I call you back?
Got it.
He did that a couple times, and I was like,
Got
then
it.
we scheduled the call, and it didn't happen. I was like, he just doesn't want to, like, he doesn't see the value in giving me his time, which I understand.
And to be fair, like I'm back in 2014, like it was so hard to get people as podcast guests, and Scott Perkin was like the one guy that I remember. He was like my 3rd interview or 2nd interview next to Matt Gibb from Australia.
Shout out to Matt Gibb.
Matt Gibb, he's been on a handful of times too. And really, if you want to talk to someone about like machine polishing and really get into the weeds with machine polishing, Matt Gibb is the guy.
We did an hour on Hawk Talk. It was a short-lived podcast of mine.
Okay.
Which is kind of like now and
With Matt Gibb?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And after an hour, he was like, because I had to like go pick up my kids or something.
Yep.
He was like, I feel like we just scratched the surface. Could we do another couple hours? I was like, dude, no. I'm tapped out, man.
You
Like,
did the Scott Perkin back to him, right?
No, the thing about that, I think that was like one of my last episodes. I was realizing that trying to make this podcast happen on the side
Wasn't
while we were
working.
starting DIY.
Yeah.
And it wasn't really a part of DIY. It was just, anyway, it was too much. Now I'm like excited for it. Now I have the mental, I'm like ready for it. But at the time I was like, I just couldn't find extra time to interview me. He was very passionate.
Very passionate guy. Very passionate.
Very knowledgeable. Kind of a legend in Australian detailing space.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I forget where I was going with that, but
You're talking about Matt from Australia, Scotty. You were talking about podcast guests.
Yeah, podcast guest, and then because your question was how do I wear all the hats, and I was answering that was part of it is that's right. That's where I was going. Sorry. So then in 2016, I was trying to make money, so I started this podcast. That's where we went, right? And that got sidetracked. And then in 2016, like December, like in a real bad financial spot, not too dissimilar from your story that you just shared, I get a random call out of the blue. That happened over the course of a couple weeks. Like, hey, has my boss called you yet? Hey, has my boss called? And it's like, I finally said, like, dude, who's your boss and what does he want? Right. You know, probably started as a Facebook message too. And this guy called and it was this guy's boss. And he was like, hey, my name's so-and-so. I own a chemical manufacturer plant here in Orange County. And we're looking to start our own brand. And we want to, it almost is like a similar setup for you would DIY, right?
Yeah.
But this place was, or maybe DIY is, whatever, it doesn't matter. This place, literally, they were blending products for places like chemical guys, right? So they were, and they brought me in and I got hired and I took it because it was a salaried position, but I could still keep detailing. And I was like, this is the greatest deal of all time. Like they just want help starting their own brand and I can help them. Like I know everything there is. And then I know other people like this and they're going to pay me. This is great. Right. And so, cause I'd never had a salary ever. right? I
And
worked
this
at a
comes from you being seen as a voice of authority that
exactly.
you established by creating the podcast.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So I was gonna
And
ask you, did you ever make money from the podcast? And like, yes, it's in different ways.
yeah, it's a very indirect. What the podcast always gave was access, and that was
Mhm.
something that I kind of started to take for granted. And I think I've been doing podcasting 10 years. I have like 900 podcast episodes, right? Like I've interviewed everyone, and for the longest time, podcasting was like kind of this like subculture, underground kind of thing, right? And now looking at it now, that's how, when you asked about who my audience is for the podcast, it's like these very loyal people, because you really had to want to listen to a podcast, right?
Yeah.
You really wanted to have to search it out. And so, but anyway, I started working for this blender. And so I saw the industry for what it is. And it started this journey of really like tainting the industry for me, because I saw everything and everyone for actually what it was.
Which is, what is it?
There is a lot of people that don't care about anything, and they just are willing to put out junk products and say anything. And I'll give you a prime example. The ceramic soaps that came out after ceramic coatings, right? So like a car wash soap, right?
Yep.
I saw that be made, that whole ceramic soap.
Okay.
And when it came out, everyone thought, oh, this is a soap that, has ceramic in it or will make water bead better or whatever, right? And it took over the industry. And then what wasn't said was that it wouldn't do any of those things that were assumed. It was just safe for ceramic coated surfaces. And it was just an all-purpose cleaner that was made thicker with just thickening agents, called a car shampoo, and marketed as a ceramic shampoo, right?
Dude, Hydrosilix sent me some ceramic shampoo. I think I did a video for them on Hawk Pro once, and I just bought it hook, line, and sinker.
Hydrosilix was another brand that was made by this chemical manufacturer that I worked at. I don't think they are anymore, but if you remember, they're not made there anymore either. But what was the purple Shine Armor? What I saw Shine Armor be made, developed, cut, re-dyed. Like I saw how the sausage was made. And it was so disappointing. Talk about stripping the joy out of the industry. These guys managed to strip the joy out of it. And it really ruined it for me, because I'm like, this is all fake. This is all made up, which it is, but which is a lot of industries. But then when you see people that aren't passionate about it and don't care either, it's very hard to rally behind that.
Because detailing is such a passion-oriented industry.
Yeah. And the guy would be like, well, who cares? Call it a waterless wash. And I'm like, but you just told me it's a spray wax. So how is it a spray wax and a waterless wash? And he's like, Jimbo, you're overthinking it. Who cares? Just like, well, I'm like, well, does it have anything to like encapsulate the dirt or like doing it? He's like, you're overthinking it. It doesn't matter. Just call it that. And I'm like, and granted, this is one example. This is not, what that led to was, because then there was a little bit of bait and switch in there. It was like, oh yeah, we want to start this brand and help us with names. And then it was like, sign the contract. Actually, we already have the name in here. Go do these videos and go do this and become the face of the brand. And at the time I'm like, well, I kind of have like my own online personality. I'm not sure I want to tie my face to this brand when I know all this back end stuff, right? It was weird. And I'm like, that's Proje, right? That was Proje Products, which is still around.
I saw him at SEMA, and I was like, I remember you did videos for Proje. I'm like,
I was at Proje. I mean, still the majority of their products, I wrote all the names. I wrote all the descriptions. Alpha Trim Gel, there's reasons behind a lot of the names. They've started to like introduce new products that have new names that I obviously didn't create, but the essential process,
who buys those products? Like, where does Proje sell?
When I left there, that brand hadn't got off the ground. And so they were still trying to make it work. And the thing is that they made the products. And so their cost and margin to like keep this brand around was virtually nothing. And so when I left, or they asked me to leave, I'm also a horrible employee too. So there's that. And that was a great example of that. But when they asked me to leave there too, they weren't making any money. They didn't have any sales. They were still trying to figure all that out. But what happened was
they couldn't afford Jimbo Balaam. Come on.
Well, what actually happened was Beadmaker got really popular. So I was helping them start this Proj brand, but at the same time, because I didn't want to tie my face to that brand because I didn't believe in the brand, I asked them, hey, could I just start private labeling chemicals? Could I just start selling to the people that I already know? And they said, yeah, sure. If you want to do that on the side, you could do that. And I had all these connections from the podcast of people. So I just started reaching out of like, hey, if you ever need any help private labeling, I work at a blender, like I can help you, right? And so Shine Armor came from one of those connections of, this guy that I'd known forever. And he goes, hey, I got this big fish on the hook. Do you think you could help me with it? Yeah, I can help you. But I didn't know too much. So I passed him to the other sales guy, and the brand he was working with became Shine Armor, And so this is a long way to get around saying, I've seen how the sausage is made, and then I've seen these brands be created from literally an idea around a table to become, really substantial brands. And what happened was Beadmaker was getting really popular, and a lot of my clients were asking for, a similar product to Beadmaker that they could private label, and the blender couldn't make that. And so, because I'm resourceful, what I started to do was call other brands that I thought were maybe also their own blender too, and see if they could private label for me. And I found another chemist locally who was an actual chemist and phenomenal. And he's like, yeah, we can make Beadmaker, like no problem. That's the most simple product ever, right?
Right.
And so I started buying chemical in bulk from him and selling it to the clients that I also had from Proj, right? And so they got wind of that, and they're like, you can't do that. Okay, no problem. Because then I also started to see the money that could be made and the money that they were paying me. And I was like, oh, got it. I see where the money's going here.
Could everything be true at once, that like you got cynical because you saw how the sausage was made? But as I mentioned, detailing is such a passion-oriented industry where it's like, never forget what it felt like when when I first got that chemical guy's detail spray and was scratching the crap out of my car because I could clean it without water. And I thought I discovered something new. And now I'm like, I probably scratched it up so bad. But it was like their detail spray, and it was like pumpkin scented or something. And I just would use the towel, and I cleaned up my paint, and I was so happy. And then I put the tire shine on, and it was like, wow. And I could make my own car shiny, and what it felt like, so empowering, so much fun. I know there's a lot of reasons why we could be cynical, but every time I get jaded or cynical or down, I just clean my car and I'm like, I remember again. I remember.
So I think the short answer is yes. Both things can be true. And I think it's becoming a little bit full circle for me even now, because I've been so cynical for so long. And then with my YouTube channel, kind of trying to expose that products are crappy, right? And at the end of the day, it's like the only person that gets hurt in that is me, because the end user, there's clearly so many people that are happy with Chemical Guys products, right? And it's like, good for them. Why should I be the one to strip them of that joy? It's kind of like paint correction.
You're going after the views, bro, you savage.
But here's what I think about burning bridges.
Calling the four guys out. What'd you say? Circle jerk? Come on. Those are my friends.
They brought it on themselves, and
okay.
there's a whole I mean, there's
I
many
take it from
things.
both sides, because now I hear it from them, and then
there's many things I could talk about them, but
I'm just trying to be. I'm like, no, Jimbo's a good guy.
So because I've been so cynical for so long, and I think those guys are new into the industry and they don't know much, and it's like I've seen the game for so long, and I see the game they're playing, and I think one thing that just drives me nuts is when people don't tell the full truth. And I'm not saying that they're not telling the full truth. I really don't care. I'm trying to move past all being cynical, because I think about it in terms of paint correction, right? Us as detailers, examine paint under lights, and we could see all these imperfections. And what does that do? It strips the joy of the thing that you just talked about, of like, I just want a clean, shiny car, right? And the vast majority of people out there just want to use car care as therapy. They need a break from their wife and kids. They can't go to the golf course anymore. So they just want to spend a couple hours in their driveway on Saturday, getting a break from the world. Are they scratching the crap out of their paint with Chemical Guy's waterless wash? Maybe. But are they happy? Yeah, they're so happy. Their car's clean.
Or maybe they're maybe we just moved past the Chemical Guys conversation and the metaphor
Whatever
still stands up. Maybe
Whatever
it's
product.
actually they're doing actually a pretty decent job.
Maybe they are.
Yeah, but it's not going to be like perfect to the detailer.
But in their eyes, it's perfect.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And in
It's
their
making them
eyes,
happy. It's
making them
rewarding.
happy.
It's therapy. It's zen. Like the number of people who say detailing is therapy, because it is, man.
It is. It really, I have started to detail because my private label business took off, especially during COVID.
Yeah.
And I was doing some consulting with like Turtle Wax, and that was going phenomenal. And so I had this really awesome business going on because I had both sides of the industry. I had a ton of experience working for blenders, dealing with chemists. And then now I had this experience working with a bunch of different brands, private label-y, right? And watching that grow and helping other people grow their brands and coming up with product ideas and getting those made. And then I had this experience of working with a global brand, right? In this very corporate environment, which was very new to me, which was very interesting. And so I had like all these perspectives. But the one thing that kept happening was I was doing a bunch of stuff I couldn't talk about, right? And I'm like, man, I've had this podcast for so long. I love talking, right? I love talking to people. I love to hear myself talk, right?
Who doesn't?
Who doesn't, right? Who's not their own biggest fan? But I couldn't talk about any of the things that I was working on. And so then I had that come into, like, so I'm cynical, and then I'm doing a bunch of work that I want to talk about, but I can't talk about it, right? So it really kind of pigeonholed me. And I realized, man, I think I just need to do this for myself, right?
Well, and I feel like during those years, like I remember seeing you at SEMA and the Koch Chemie event, and you were making money, I think. I'm just putting that.
I was making a lot of money. Private labeling is very lucrative.
I'm like, are you going to be doing any content? You're like, no, I'm just kind of here to network. So I feel like as you progressed in that world, you became less influential on social media. You kind of pulled back from the talking about and the presenting of.
Because I'm only good about talking about what's in front of me. Like, and I think to your Gary Vee examples they've talked about before, like, what does Gary say? Like, just talk about what you're doing. Just talk about what you're doing. Well, if I'm working on a, Turtle Wax, global product launch for 2025, which I don't work for them anymore, but say I was, and it's launching in March, and that's all consuming for me, and I'm testing these products and blah, blah, blah. I can't talk about any of that. So I can't talk about what's right in front of me. You know what I mean? And so it became very difficult to, like, try to create content because I can't talk about any of the stuff that I'm doing all week, right? And so I started to hate that because I'm like, I love to talk about what's right in front of me. It's what's easiest to talk about. It's the easiest way to create content. It's like the best of everything, right? If you could just talk about what you're just doing life, and then you're just talking about what you're doing. And that's what
favorite.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, my favorite thing in news was, Nick, we got a breaker. There's a fire, right? I started covering wildfires in Colorado, and I cut my teeth at it. Like, I'm not saying the best, but like put me up against anybody at the network level, even like national news, CNN. If you give me something shiny behind me, I say shiny, not really. I'm talking about, smoke in the air, fire consuming acres, containment lines, people being evacuated from their homes, like the drama, the suspense, like there's a flood, there's a fire, there's snow, there's a pileup on the freeway. I can talk. And I can talk, and I can talk. And if it's right in front of me, man, I can do it. I loved it. So that's why, like you said, when I was actually detailing on the front lines, that's when I felt like I had a lot to say.
Mm-hmm.
And as that ebbed,
I'm right there with you.
Less to say because I wasn't in the shop as much on the Hawk Pro detailing side. So yeah, I know what you mean. It's like when you're not really able to talk about it, what do you have to say?
nothing. Right. And that's where like the podcast suffered, everything started to suffer. And then it was finally like, you know what, I want to build something for myself. And so that's in February of this year, I started Jimbo's Detailing, shut down the consulting side of things. I still do the private labeling quite a bit. But I have an outlet in the Jimbo's Detailing brand.
What's your best product?
My best product?
Yeah, like don't give me any crap. Like I'm gonna buy one product. It's you get me for a customer for life, or I'm leaving you forever. Don't give me Interior Clean and Protect from Optimum. Give me like Power Clean or ONR, right? Like give me like the best one I can buy, so I'm gonna be a fan. Like if I had the best chance of becoming a fan of yours, what's the first product I should try?
I think it's going to be a toss-up between my dressing all dressed up and my toughest shell, which is the ceramic spray. I think a versatile dilutable tire shine is just something that can give you immediate satisfaction. I think a shiny tire. I detailed the car yesterday for a buddy that I went to high school with. He had like sap on his car and he thought I was just removing the sap, and I like dressed the tires just because.
Yeah.
It's the first comment. He didn't even look to see if the sap was there anymore. He's like, man, you even shined up the tires for me? You know, so.
We should cut this into a short. Let's talk about tire shine.
Okay, let's talk about tire shine. I made a note. You also had another good one at 1 hour, 8 minutes when
Dude,
the wildfire.
What do you think this is? These are notes. I don't even know what's on here. These are time codes from my last interview with Joe Fernandez.
Got
Leave
it.
Me Home Foundation if you want to support his bikes. But he gives away bikes for Christmas.
Yeah.
These are all time codes I was writing down as we did it because I knew later on I would want those soundbites. Everyone in detailing talks about glazed donuts like it's a bad thing. Like shiny tires. I only want matte finish. Dude, people love shiny tires. I'm really
no
trying
one
to give
wants.
you a soundbite. I'm trying to give you a soundbite.
I like. There's two things. So there's that reminds me of that. You know what else no one wants, but everyone says they want, is a product that sheets water instead of beads water. No one wants that, but everyone says they want it.
Well, isn't sheeting versus beading just a matter of like how much water you're putting on the paint?
It could be. You could definitely, and I've covered that a million times in my torture
Ivan
test.
will do that in a video.
Yes, you can
do a slow flow and the whole thing sheets off. And
you can doctor the water depending on the flow. You can doctor the bead or sheeting depending on the flow of water.
I want to talk about tire shine though.
Let's talk about tire shine.
People say they want the matte finish. I'm not convinced of that. I think
no one wants matte finish. You know what no one wants is sling. So they equate a matte finish to no sling. But given the opportunity, everyone would take a little bit of a higher gloss because let's be honest, a higher gloss tire looks dialed in. It does. It does. How's that first soundbite?
That's why I didn't say anything. It's because I wanted to hear you finish. I wanted to hear the finished thought. Dude, I saw Shine tires in the parking lot, and I pointed out to my kids. I saw the paint first, and it looked like someone had like washed their car. It was a snowy day, so anytime that there's like a clean car on a wintry day, you know someone has gone the extra mile. But I knew it looked extra shiny, and sure enough, like I looked at the tires, and they've been dressed. And I told my kids, I'm like, that person detailed their car. You see how they dressed the tires? It just adds that look, man.
I used to, I even did a podcast on this. I think a daily detail tip one time. And I said, if you're a mobile detailer and your rig's a little dirty, all you need to do is clean your rims and dress your tires.
This is how much of a student of Jimbo I am. I believe this was in the era when you literally had a Mercedes Sprinter van.
Yes.
Yeah, I know that because I listened to every damn podcast of yours back in the day.
In the mobile recording
I'm pinching
studio.
myself that I'm on the auto detailing podcast today. I still wish you had that Sprinter van. It was too baller for your clients, huh? It
was too baller for the clients. It was a great family car / mobile detailing rig for the time. I had 3 really young kids at the time. I was getting ready even back then. I was going to start. I had met a guy randomly because I'm constantly scheming, trying to figure out something. And I'd met a guy. I still believe in this technology for coating cars. It was an electrostatic sprayer. It was like a jet pack. And the technology behind an electrostatic sprayer in the electrostatic is like powder coating, right? So you could spray an item direct on, and it would it would create a charge that would make the product like run around to the back of the thing. So you can spray the front of this bottle. Where are we? The front of this bottle, but you would cover the back of it too, right? So you could get full coverage of something. And they were starting to use this spray disinfectant stuff. This is pre-COVID.
Yeah. Okay.
They would hospitals were using it to disinfect because when hospital rooms, because one thing you never think about is in a hospital room, you know how they have that curtain that they'll draw, right, for privacy. Well, how often do you think that curtain gets cleaned? Never. And how would you even clean it?
Dude, hospital rooms are nasty.
Really, right?
They've got to be nasty.
They got to be gross, right? Think about mops and you're kind of just smearing bacteria around. It's a very bacteria heavy place. So they were going into these hospitals and saying, hey, we could actually spray this disinfectant in a room in 3 minutes. And because of the electrostatic technology, you can disinfect this whole room and actually get 99.99% kill on bacteria, right? And so, but I randomly met this guy and I was like, man, if we could put a ceramic coating in this and then you could spray a ceramic coating on a car, you could get full coverage on glass, paint, wheels, trim in 2 minutes. You could literally spray this whole car so fast and then guarantee that you get full coverage. This would be insane.
Okay.
Right?
Tell me more.
So I went down that route trying to develop that. I was getting the Sprinter van because I was going to build out this whole brand for spraying ceramic coatings on cars through this electrostatic sprayer. And I just couldn't get I went through so many iterations and I couldn't get it to work, right? So then on top of that, the van was way too fancy and I was like, I got to simplify a little bit, right? Simplify. So
we promised we were going to talk about the Tundra.
Didn't we?
Bro, no, we didn't talk about the Tundra.
Let's talk about the Tundra, but we still haven't even gotten to your journey. You haven't even started at DIY yet either.
Bro, I got places to be. We got to wrap this up.
I know. So let's talk about the Tundra real quick. So
I have places to be. I just, I do have.
Yeah, you got to.
People are going to listen to this later. They don't care what I have to do today. Let's continue the conversation.
Okay, so after the Sprinter, I got a Tundra.
And this was kind of in your prime YouTube, cheap versus expensive.
Yes.
Cheap
2017, 2018.
You're evolving onto YouTube and you're starting to get big traction by doing this cheap versus expensive. And you're rocking around in this white Toyota Tundra. And I'm
my favorite
I want to be like
setup.
Jimbo.
Yep. Nick's the fanboy.
We go back a ways, don't we?
We go back a long ways.
Yes. We have a history. Again, thank
history.
you for asking me on the podcast so many times, so early on in my journey. I know you always believed in me, and I really that meant a lot to me.
I was waiting for your journey to develop so we could tell the whole story. I didn't want to interview you in Atlanta, Georgia.
No.
As we're smoking cigs. So anyway, yeah, my favorite setup, I went to a Tundra. So Nick reaches out again and says, I need a truck.
Naturally, I'm this new detailer who's trying to my eyes are so wide, doe-eyed. I'm going to clean cars and, my empire will follow. You just get so wrapped up in how exciting it is that the next guy wants to pay you for your services. You're in that honeymoon phase, right? And I had a lot of business coming in and I was doing a lot of mobile jobs and I was doing it out of my Subaru Legacy. So I wanted to get a Tundra like you, right?
Of course you did.
Many
people did around that time.
I asked you how much you paid for this. And I'm like, do you like the Tundra? Da-da-da-da. And you told me it was I don't know, low 40s. How much did you pay for that?
So I don't remember the exact dollar amount. All I remember is my brother-in-law worked at a Toyota dealership at the time.
Okay.
And was like, here's the deal. You don't want sticker. You don't want invoice. You want book. He goes, everyone is obsessed with, I got it for sticker or, I got it for invoice. I got such a good deal. He goes, but that's the dealership game. What you want is you want the car for book value. That's what we actually pay for it. And guess what? I can get it for $1,000 under book.
I'm looking through my email maybe you sent me this. I think you texted it to me because I wanted to see if I had the actual screenshot of it.
Yeah, so I got this insane deal on this Tundra. And you were like, hey, I need a Tundra. And I'm like, look, don't pay sticker, don't pay invoice. You want to get to book. Like they'll tell you that invoice is the lowest, but it's book value. Go for book. And if you can get it for book, then you know you got a good deal. And so you take
so I take my ass to the, Toyota dealership in Salt Lake, and I'm like, I'm interested in a Tundra, We start talking prices, and they're like, nobody gets a Tundra for that. And I'm like, dude. And
I think it was right under 40. Now that it was
like 39.9.
Yeah,
it was under 40 for a Tundra. Which is like, if you look at prices now for a Tundra,
I should have bought all the Tundras. Yeah.
It's insane. Somehow I give him like $500 or $1,000 cash that day. I'm like, I'll be back tomorrow. I show him the thing. He's like, let's do the deal. Like somehow, like they didn't. I got the management. All of a sudden I'm playing hardball. Somehow. Because of this proof in my hand, I'm like, no, I'm not going to do it. And I think they were trying to sell at the end of the month. Somehow I get this crazy deal. And when I showed up, they gave me the one without the bed liner. So I think they tried to swap like a cheaper Tundra. And I'm like,
got it.
Sorry, this isn't the one I'm walking. And they're like, no. I'm like, plus I told you don't detail it. It was in the dealership detail bay.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so I walk out with this Tundra. I think I put like $1,000 cash down. The note was for $40,000. It was crazy, and I owe that to you. So guess what I sold it for? 40,000 miles later.
40,000.
2020. So I had it for 2 years,
and
I had 40,000 miles on it.
You probably sold it for 40, 42.
Yep.
That's why I bought a Tundra. Yep.
It's crazy.
I did the same thing twice.
A little lift and had to do some maintenance on it, but
not bad though, right? Because a new car, a car in general is a bad deal, right? No matter how you splice it, it's a bad investment. So I looked at it like you want the best bad investment possible, right?
Dude, I just thank you for that, man. That Tundra brought a lot of memories.
Yeah, it's a good. I sold mine too. I wish I would have kept it, but I learned that though from my clients too. And the reason why I went back to Toyota after the Sprinter was some of my clients were buying Lexuses and then they were leasing them and then buying out the lease and then selling it and like making a lot of their money back. And they were like, yeah, it's a way that you can like pretty much drive a brand new car for free. Like you make the payments, but then you get all your money back. And I was like, what? So that's how I started looking at
you just said. I was looking through my Jimbo emails. I have an email to Billy Boggess in January of 2018.
Another podcast guest, Billy Boggess. Me and Billy Boggess recorded a whole podcast episode where he had to hold his whole computer upside down because he couldn't get the camera to work. And after an hour and a half of trying, he's like, the only way I can get it to work is if the computer's upside down. And he recorded a whole podcast episode with the computer upside down.
Amazing. I was asking him, that's such a good story of like OG old school podcast. What are you drinking there? What kind of tea you got?
This is a
chamomile?
No, this is an English breakfast.
Oh, English breakfast.
With some raw agave and a splash of oat milk.
That's some Orange County bougie right there.
You know me.
I don't hate. I asked Billy when my F-bomb all-purpose cleaner would arrive. McGuire's APC isn't my favorite, and Jimbo Balaam recommended your product, is what I said to him.
That's right, baby.
Oh, Beth Boggess responded. Anyway, shout out to small businesses and working hard, customer service. Man, we go back a long time.
Yeah. So to wrap up the answer, that was a long-winded answer to your question. I've seen it from every angle. So I leverage some other people, definitely. I don't do everything myself. And that's why when you said, oh, break this into clips, I'm like, I'm definitely not doing that. I'll have someone else help me with that. But the high touch points of customer service, I feel like that needs to be done by me.
Yes.
And so those, the packing, I have some help with packing up stuff. But my dad owns and has owned for 25 years a pack and ship, like a mailbox, et cetera, whatever, UPS store, right? So I have extensive packing and shipping knowledge. And I could run circles around anyone with a tape gun. So like nice. I pride myself in how well I can work a tape gun and put a box together. So that's a
big deal.
It's a big deal.
In your world, in my world, yeah. It's a big deal.
So, but back to your story. I know we got to end this soon, but if we've caught up to now. Ivan reaches out. He says he's got a business proposition with you. It doesn't include taking feet pics or pictures with your shirt off.
And I'm like, I basically was like, I have this full-time career. Could I do this on the side? And the way he said is like, the person I'm talking to would want this to be something where like you'd be on the QVC shopping network or whatever, like, so you'd be very publicly like the face of it. So it would be that big. And I asked him, I'm like, what do you think, salary wise? And it was enough to like quit my job. It was the promise, This was a year before anything really even happens. And I was like, cool, yeah, I'm in, And then like I just totally forgot about it. And I'm like, that's just Ivan, he's just chatting. It was just like, to me, I didn't know if it was real or not. And I didn't necessarily like know Ivan that well. He'd been to my shop for a training in 2017 or 2018. He'd come back and we shot some more content. Like we had a vibe. Like Ivan and I on camera, like the videos did very well on the YouTube channel. So there was something. I
got a really funny Ivan story too that I'll tell you.
I do believe there's something to be said for like a proven track record.
Sure.
Because I've tried other different YouTube videos. Like detail, like anybody can start a detailing YouTube channel, and if people resonate with it, it can grow fast. That's not the case in every other field. There's something about detailing where you can get up to like 100 subscribers and then 1,000 subscribers by working really hard. And I haven't seen that in every other facet of YouTube. So it's a beautiful thing, if you do it right. And so Ivan and I hadn't really talked at all. I'm just kind of continuing to go through the motions at work. And I think that's grossly oversimplifying life, right? Like
sure,
things are happening, ups and downs and hopes and dreams, and still have Hawk Pro detailing the business, but that's kind of starting to really be a challenge. And then, honestly, I think at the point this happens, like Greg and I, my business partner, had kind of gotten a divorce. It had just become too stretched financially. I think the cracks in the foundation get exposed when the money gets dry. And he was just like, he took the business, and then I took the detailing channel, Hawk Pro. And this is one thing I haven't really ever said publicly, so I'll say it on the podcast. Like I ended up, because of my divorce, I had to go into a lot of credit card debt paying for my attorney. Like I didn't want the divorce, but then I was like, okay, now I have to fight for my kids and custody and all this stuff. I ended up having to like file bankruptcy. It sucked. So I had to like dissolve the business technically. Like money was getting tight for me. Like I had no room left in my credit cards to pay my divorce attorney, and the divorce wasn't finalized yet. So like things were getting really hard. So that was close to rock bottom too, man. And then at that time financially, like Hawk Pro detailing was difficult. 4,000 square foot shop, trying to pay rent. It was me and Greg and a technician, so we had a lot of mouths to feed. Greg always wanted to get paid first so that he could pay his rent. It was just a whole thing, and I'm sure it always takes two to tango, but at that point, it was like, I'm just dissolving like my interest in Hawk Pro. So I get the YouTube channel and you get the business. Let's go our separate ways. And that's kind of how it went. And so I'm just sort of like, at this point, and Ivan had, I think, reached out. The DIY detail was kind of like more of a tangible thing. I think we had maybe made a visit to Omaha where our managing partner was and shot some videos at this point. But it was never like, Nick, we can't really afford to pay Nick his salary. So I was still working at the TV news station. And then Ivan and I did this disaster of a live stream where we like introduced ourselves as DIY Detail. I think we did it on Facebook or something. And it got barely any views. And it was just like, what are we doing here? And sort of my managing partner of the business was kind of like, all right, I think if we're going to make DIY Detail really work, like we need someone doing content full time, right? Like this all evolves as it's happening. Like
totally.
At first it's like, Nick, you can do this on the side and like see where it goes. And I'm like, you know what? I'm ready to take that risk, even though I know that I'm also the face of the news station. Like, and then it's like, what about going full time? And initially I asked about it and it was like, probably can't afford to do that. And then I think after this live stream, that was precipitation of like, there's a lot of money invested in this, and that live stream wasn't great. And like I remember going on the dude, this is crazy. I know we got to wrap up, but the DIY Detail Facebook group.
We could always do part 2.
We could, right?
Another time,
was detailing for dummies, and then we sponsored it. I'm not sure how that all worked, but the name changed to DIY Detail, right? It's got like 47,000 members at this point. and it's now our page basically. And I remember going on to be like, hey guys, Ivan and I started this business. We would like to give away a free bottle of rinseless wash and ceramic gloss to the first 50 people who respond. 4 people responded, Jimbo. We couldn't even give the stuff away. All right, that's another soundbite. When we started, we couldn't even give the stuff away. Nobody gave us the time of day, and we thought it was over. Soundbite.
Oh, you're a pro, dude. That was so good. I love that.
No, but like it was that bad.
I'm
Like nobody
asterisking
even
that
would
one.
take it for free. I remember, like, look back on the DIY Detail Facebook group. Be
Oh,
like,
I'm going to.
Nick 2020 free product or something, and you'll see me 20 pounds heavier trying to give away the stuff in a polo in my living room with like a white wall behind me, like holding them up and being like,
Not the
"Hey,
beautiful
guys."
studio you have behind you
like,
now.
Ivan and I just started anyway. And I remember just being like, what is happening right now? And then it was around that time that I think, our managing partner was like, I think we want to try to make you full time. Like, I think I could probably figure this out where we match whatever you're making there. Would you be down? And I was like, because my contract was coming up for the news station. And so at that point, I'm like, probably. So I go to the news station and my contract's coming up. And the thing about this is, it's such a challenged shop that like, our general manager had been fired by corporate, which was Nexstar. So we didn't have a GM. And then our news director, who's like the boss of the actual newsroom, got fired too. So we're in a total leadership vacuum. It's like the blind leading the blind. Like people that were like barely my managers are now acting like they're the boss of the whole newsroom. They're making decisions around things. And I'm like, dude, my contract's up in 2 months. Like, it's a big deal on TV news. Like, you are a contract by contract. Like, you live and die and breathe by your if you don't get a contract renewal, you're off to another city in the Midwest who will hire you, right? Like, it's a very transient industry because it's very hard intercity. Like, a lot of non-competes exist, so you don't really hop stations in the same city. So if you don't get your contract that you want, you're off to another city or market because they're always going to believe in you more when you're the new face. You're always going to get more money if you're the new face. You're going to get like a 2% raise when you're staying at the same company, unless you're like God's gift, right? That's just the tough
Whit
nature
Johnson.
of TV news. Yeah, like if you're a true once-in-a-generation talent, you may get a nice raise. But other than that, they're giving you a 2% raise, and you should be grateful for it.
Got it.
So actually, that's what starts happening at the news station. I'm like, my contract's coming up soon. Like, there's an interim GM hired by corporate who doesn't even know who I am, who's like, oh yeah, we'll get it right on this. And it's like a month before my contract's up, and they've like come back and they're like, we'd like to re-sign you for a 2% raise. And I was like, all right, cool. It's pretty simple. And then they hired a new GM with like 2 weeks left for my contract. And I was like, I'm not really sure what's going on here. At this point, like fully on to DIY Detail. Like I'm going to do it. But I'm like, well, I just want to test the waters. Like, does anybody have anything left for me? And so they're like, sorry, this is the best we can do. And I was like, man, I've been here for 6 years. Like I could have been someone who was here for 20 years. Like you could have had a face here because it's such a transient challenge station. And so I was like, all right, here's my letter of resignation. Like, it's been an honor working with you for 2 days, to this GM. And then he comes back like a week later. He's like, hey, I had to really fight tooth and nail with corporate. Like, will you come up to my office? And it was a 5% raise. And I was like, cool. I think I'm going to pass, but like, I really appreciate it, And so that's when I was like, I'm fully in, no plan B. Like, and I already kind of knew that's what I wanted to try. I was like late 30s at that point, 36. It's like, if you're going to try a business, probably not going to get any easier. It's probably not going to be any like less responsibility in terms of family. Your body's going to feel obviously probably better today than it will in 5-10 years. Like there's a lot of regret in life that we don't want to like to avoid. So it's like, if I'm going to try something, let's try it. And we just went for it. So that's how that happened. And I just became a full-time. And then we just evolved over how we were doing things, shooting videos off the phone, getting better, camera equipment. We started off in a smaller little warehouse in Omaha, and then we moved to this shop here, and that's where we're at, man. It's been a wild journey. Now we're in like countries all over the world, and man, it's rocking and rolling. It's grown, and I'm grateful for every second of it. Like I said, whenever I lose perspective of what I'm doing or what this industry is, I just go out and clean the car, and I'm like, I remember. I love this. This is amazing. This is what I fell in love with. Yeah, man.
I love it. No, I love it. You gave me, I think I pulled out 6 or 7 sound bites that I think we'll use.
There you go.
But if people want to kind of follow you or check out your new podcast, Nick at Night, or your brand DIY Detail, how can they after they purchase from Jimbo's Detailing, then they could go to DIY. But
Yeah, I
how
don't
could they
care
find
what
it?
products people use. Like, honestly, if you want to use another brand,
I'm
like, I'm
teasing.
just grateful that people are listening.
No, I'm totally teasing, and I
No,
think
I want them to support you. Like, I'm like, yeah, go ahead.
no, it's not saturated at all. And I think part of my like trying to get out of what we talked about, like not being so cynical, because what I have learned too is there's people like yourself in this industry, and not everyone is like that blender that I worked for who really didn't give a crap about the end user. There are people and brands that really care about their end user, right? And really
Totally.
care about the user experience. And there are, really good people in this industry. And I think I lost sight of that for a long time, and I let kind of the bad apples get into my life. And I think that's why, like, the whole circle jerk thing that you brought up, it's like, it's still so raw for me of like, there's jerks out there, right? And there's people that like don't want to see the best of other people. And so I think at the end of the day, one thing I need to keep perspective on too is like, there's going to be people like the blender that I work for. There's going to be people like that group of people. There's going to be people that are trying to undermine other people and cut other people down. And I don't need to play in that sandbox.
Well, speaking of those people who I actually am friends with
Which is great.
So House of Rags, they have brought on a bunch of podcasters to their channel. Thor Media, I think is what they're calling it. And so if you want to watch, and I'm really hoping this becomes like, I don't know. I was a news anchor for the weekends, just the weekends. So I anchored Saturday and Sunday, but our big show was 10 o'clock Sunday night. That was our highest rated show. Not because of me, it's because we had that as like a legacy time slot. And so the 10 o'clock show always did really well on Sunday nights. So Nick at Night is at 8 p.m. Eastern. We do a premiere on House of Rags. And it's only one episode deep so far. Had Chicago Auto Pros, Jason Ottern is talking about the fall of his business, and now he's got Car Supplies Warehouse and just kind of his really tough year. But I'm hoping to bring on really good guests and working really hard on, telling the stories well. And so I'm excited about that. And then obviously DIY Detail across all social media. But yeah, man, I would love to. We do a live premiere. So we all are sitting the breeze talking about life. We're all hanging out by the fire. As we used to do in the old days, the caveman
in Georgia
by the fire.
Yeah, smoking cigs.
Okay, those days.
Our old days.
Our old days.
Man, I enjoyed it. I
You
enjoyed
like
doing
the
this.
menthol cigs, huh? You were like, dude, I love menthol.
I'll take it. Yeah.
I don't think I had menthol. What was I smoking? Man, I don't know. Dude.
Like
I'm
Camel
glad.
Crush back in the day. Remember those? Like, I'll take anything. I don't do it now. My dad had a heart attack and was a smoker growing up, and so I'm like,
really?
dude, I really like don't want to. He didn't have a heart attack. I'm sorry. He did have open heart surgery with the double bypass and was very close to having a heart attack. So they attributed a lot of that to him smoking in his younger years. And so I was like, not that I ever was a smoker, but this gave me reason enough to not. But
Yeah.
did have a cigar and it made me sick, but whatever.
Yeah, cigars. We had a couple cigars at SEMA this year, and that was
It's a different experience.
Everyone left with COVID this SEMA again.
The SEMA flu, man.
You didn't come, and I'm like, Friend
Maybe
of mine
next
got
year.
bronchitis. Another one got like COVID pneumonia. I got COVID, I'm pretty sure. Like another one got COVID. Yeah, it was a third year in a row I've left with a serious illness from SEMA.
I might cut, a few years back, like right before COVID, I brought my video guys and did a bunch of podcasts at SEMA, and the SEMA content just like didn't resonate with people back then, even though I had some like really good videos. I have a really good video.
videos.
You
You're
know,
the one who told me about the Flex PXE80.
yeah, which is a great video. That was an off the
Banger
cuff video. And it just didn't resonate with people back then, and so I didn't see. It was quite an investment to bring those people with me and put them up in hotels and meals and all that. And the content didn't perform well. But I think, and we talked about this before or off recording too, of like, I think that shift is changing a little bit. So I think I've interviewed Justin Lobato, 3 years in a row at SEMA. Like,
You just like done it all, right? How do you?
I've done it all. So
Gary Vee talks about it, and so does Ivan. It's like so interesting. I put them in the same conversation, but because my lens is content.
sure.
You say the same things a lot. You can say them differently. You can add fresh perspective.
Sure.
You can do them in a different setting. You can there can be a different context. It's not always the same thing, but like we've washed a car a few times on DIY Detail,
Sure.
right? We're gonna wash it. We're gonna wash a few more. So I think just because you've done it before, it's obviously just you. It's the Jimbo show. So you have to motivate yourself. But you're assuming that people have been paying attention, and
Right.
that you're like so saturated in
100%.
their life. And what Gary Vee recently said that resonated with me is like, nobody knows who the hell you are.
Yep.
And you're not doing enough content.
Well, Nick, thank you with that. Thank you for being the first guest back in a long time. I haven't had a guest on the podcast in a really long time. So it's almost like you're the first again.
And you were the first.
Yep.
The OG in the industry.
The OG.
I had 3
very
cups of
first.
coffee and this giant water. This
Let's
guy
do it.
right here.
Well, we'll
So
do
I
a part
think it's
2
time.
or we'll do another one, but thanks, Nick. I appreciate it.
All right, brother. Appreciate you having me on.